Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, we find facts and fine-tune figures.
Welcome back, guys. I hope you are enjoying this series. We are coming to an end gradually, but before we finish, there is more experiences in Microsoft Fabric that we want to explore, and one of them is data activator. In this data activator experience, we are also going to explore some part of the real analytics. So, what does data activator do? It takes action based on what is happening in your data. Consider the following three scenarios. A warehouse manager needs to detect drop in product stock and need to start a reorder process to prevent running out of stock. So in this kind of scenario, I want to be able to know when I should place a stock without running out of stock. And also, a sales associate needs to receive alerts when a potential client is visiting their website and offers to start a live chat with them. Typically, I'm sure that at one point or the other, you've gone on a website and immediately when you're on that website, a chat icon comes up where you can actually have a live chat on that website. How does that happen? Some of these things happen if you are using data activator. So how do they know that you're on that website? It's through things like data activator. Then the next scenario, a network administrator detects potential security breach through real-time monitoring and initiates protective action. Somebody is trying to hack into your organization system, but you are getting a notification in real time. How is this happening? So all of this can be monitored using data activator, and there are other scenarios that you can use data activator for, or you can come with me and see what data activator can be used for. So I want you to think of if function or switch to function or power automate when you are thinking about data activator. Like I said, it takes action based on what is happening on your data. If function or switch to function is such that if a particular condition is met, then this action should happen. For example, if we have clients that are making purchases of more than 10,000, then you should get this certain amount of discount. So some of these things you can do or implement with your if function or with your switch to function. Or if you think of power automate, where once you get a particular email from a particular group in your organization, then this automatic response should happen to them. So this is how I want you to think about data activator. But before you continue, there are some concepts I want us to understand when it comes to data activator. The first one is events. Events within data activator means your entire data set. You can have a data set that is up to 10, 15, 20 columns. So when you talk about events, it means your entire data set. Then objects. Following closely in the concept that you need to understand is object. A column out of your entire data set is what is being referred to as object within data activator. Object is a column within your data set. You can have a sales data that is about 10 to 20 rows, but one column out of it is an object. And then lastly, you have triggers. These are conditions that you set to monitor events or initiate action in your data set. So let's go back to Fabric environment and see how data activator works. Now we are back in our Fabric environment where we are going to be working with data activator. But before we go in get working, let me give us a background of what we want to do. What we want to do with data activator is that we want to monitor a stock, and then we want to be able to automate bidding price for a particular stock that we are interested in. So to do that, we have to switch to data activator experience. So once I switch to data activator experience, there is only one item that you can create within data activator experience, which is your reflex. So I'm going to create a reflex now, and I'll give my reflex a name. So this is the interface of what a reflex look like. Then we can click on get data. But data we are going to be using is not on this interface. So we are going to just rename this our reflex and then go and source for our data elsewhere. So I'll just take out the timestamp that we have on the name. Let me just call it reflex 1, and then I'll hit enter on my keyboard. Then this reflex has been created for us. Now the data set we are going to be using is going to be a real-time analytics data, so a streaming data. So to get that data set, I can then switch to my real-time analytics. Now that real-time analytics, there are a number of sources that you can get your streaming data, that it can be from your event stream. Though for this project you're going to be using an event stream, but other things where you can store your real-time data is in your KQL database or your KQL query set that you can use to query this KQL database. This kind of database is actually structured and unstructured for streaming and querying streaming data, which is optimized for that purpose. But for this demonstration, we are going to be creating an event stream. So I'll click on event stream, and then once I click on event stream, I'll give my event stream a name. So I'll just call it event one. I'll call it event one. I'll click on create. So this event stream will be created for me. So this event stream is such that I'm specifying the source of the data that will be streaming into a particular destination. So as this is loading up, you see that we have a source and then we also have a destination. So we have to configure this source and then we have to configure this destination. All the sources that are available within your event stream object will be shown, and also the destination that is available. So I can click here to see all the sources that are available. You have a sample data, Azure Event Hub, your Azure IoT Hub, or you can even stream data from your custom application. The same thing applies if you go this route to actually stream data into wherever destination that you are going to specify later. But in our case now, since we don't have any IoT setup or any event hub on Azure portal, we are going to be using a sample data. So I will click on sample data. Remember I said that what we want to do is to monitor the bidding price and automate that process such that you don't have to monitor your stock yourself. All this process is automated on the background, and then all you have to do is to make cool money. So we are going to give our source a name. So let me call it source one. I'll call it source one. And then these are a number of data that you have here. So we have bicycle data, you have yellow taxi, you also have stock market. So I will use stock market since we are monitoring stock. And I will click on add. So that will successfully configure our source for me. And then I can click on here to preview our data and see what that data look like. You can see that we have this data now. And within data activator, like I explained earlier, your data set is your event. So this is the event that we want to monitor. So you have your symbol, you have your sector, and every other column that you have in this data set. But we are not done with your streaming event. We have to now configure the destination. So I'll click on new destination. So in our case now, remember that we created a reflex earlier. So the destination for this streaming data is going to be our reflex. I believe by now we are all familiar with the lakehouse, but we are not streaming this data into our lakehouse. We want to stream it into a reflex where we can now use it to monitor activity that is going to be happening within our data set. In this case now, we want to monitor the bid price. So I will select this destination to be a reflex. So once I select that, then I can give my destination a name. Let me just call it destination one, and then I will select the workspace where that reflex is located. In our case, we know that our workspace we have been working with is fabric course. So I will select fabric course, and then we can now pick the reflex. You know, that is why I said the naming is very important. So this is the reflex that we created, reflex one. So I will select that, and I will click on add. Once I click on add, then I will wait for it to be loaded into our reflex environment. Then I can go back into our reflex environment and see if this streaming data is getting to the reflex. Now we can see that our reflex is active, so we can switch back to our reflex, and then we can now reload this page to make sure that this data is being streamed into this reflex environment. So once this page is done reloading, I expect that the data that we specify to this reflex will be available for our use here. So you can see now that it is now available. You see the data set is under event. Like I said, your data set is under event. You can see now that the interface of our reflex is is now different when we have data available here. So we have two tabs on your reflex interface. You have your data tab and you also have your design tab. So but before you can go to your design tab, then you have to first configure some things in your data tab. You know that this is now our design tab, and it's saying that we should go back into our data tab. It's until you have complete work on your data tab before you can actually proceed to your design tab. So let's go back to our data tab. So on our data tab now, we have a preview of our data set. And again, the second concept I mentioned that we need to understand when it comes to data activator is your object. Object is a column of a data set that you want to monitor. So link your event stream to one or more objects to use in data activator. So you have a new object, or you can assign to an existing object. So you can just inspect your data set and see what you have in your data set. You see that you have your bidding price, which is what we want to monitor, so that when this bid price is at a particular range that we specify, then data activator can help us to make a trade and take a position at that bid price we are going to specify. And you have other columns. But here, when you want to assign your updates, you have to use for a unique identifier. Looking through this data set, the only unique identifier that we have here is the symbol. This HOJ, they are actually unique to every stock that we want to monitor. So I'm going to pick this symbol as our object. So let me just call this, let me just give this object a name. Let me just call it monitor monitor stock monitor stock. Then I will assign a key column. So I will just pick a column in my data set for that purpose. So I'm going to pick on symbol. Then once I click on symbol, then I can save. So I can either save and create another object if there is another object I want to monitor, or I can save and go to design mode. So I will save and go to design mode. So now I believe that our design mode will now be available for us to use and work with. So now we are in design mode. In our design mode now, you see we have new property, you have new trigger, you have custom action, and then you see that the object that I created is monitor stock. So under this object, we can now create a trigger or a property, and then we also have an event. So this is the event that we specified. So but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to just monitor one of these stock. So I'll pick this NSFT. So instead of monitoring the thing so that it becomes simple for us. So I'm going to pick NSFT, and then I'm going to change this time frame to the last 15 minutes so that we can see how beautiful this chart is going to look. So I will change it to the last 15 minutes, which I have done already, and then this chart is going to update for the last 15 minutes. So once that is done, then we can now configure our new trigger. So we've talked about the event already, we also talk about the object, and then the last concept is now your new trigger. So this is still loading up, so you just allow it to load up and then you can continue your work. So what you can do now is that you can actually rename this, but you can leave it the way it is, depends on you. So let's pick on new trigger. So the new trigger is such that I want to monitor the bidding price. So I'll click on new trigger. So once I select new trigger, then a trigger will be created for me based on this data set. So this chart has been updated, so I will click on my new trigger again, and then I will expect to have the interface where I can set up my trigger. So the trigger has been created for me. I can now rename this trigger to take stop position. Take stop position. So that's what I want to call my trigger. You can call your own trigger anything that you want. Then I can hit enter on my keyboard. So what I have here is, then I have to select a property or a column of my event that I want to monitor. So I will come here and I will navigate through here. So what we want to monitor is actually the bid price. So I will select that, and then this chart will be populated for me, and then we can see the bidding price of this chart in the last 15 minutes. Remember that what we have done is to change it to 15 minutes, but you can still change it further again to the number of minutes that you want, or hour, or even days, or you can even use a custom. But for simplicity, let's just stick to 15 minutes, or you can even monitor more than one. But like I said, so that this will not look too clumsy, we are monitoring just this NFT stock. So you can, over on this chart now, you can see that on the y-axis we have the time, and then on the x-axis we have the price of this stock. So you can see that at this particular time, this is the price of this stock, this is the value of this stock. You have the object ID, and then you also have the value of this stock. So because it is streaming data, this will be changing over time every 15 minutes. So the chart that we have is for the last 15 minutes. So now we have to set up our trigger completely. So we have to detect an action or the type of trigger that you want. There are a number of them. Is that a numeric type or logical type or a common type? Under the logical type, you have when it's greater than, when it's equals to, and when you have logical type 2, when it is true, when it is false, you have common type. So you can set up any of these conditions based on your trigger that you want to use. So in our case now, because what we want to monitor is the price of the bidding price, what is applicable to us is the numerical trigger that we are going to set up. Either you use these ones that are here, or you can use this. So I'm going to pick on numerical trigger. So what I want to do is that I want to set up a bidding price position, but for me to do that I have to look at this stock first. You can see that mostly we have around 340, 310, 200, 370, and all of that. So maybe I want to take my stock when it is around 300, for example, because there are instances where this stock is more than 300. At this particular time is 310, at this time is 290, at this time is 340. So depending on where you want to take a position, so I'm going to take maybe at 300. So I'll come to my numeric trigger, then I will do that when it is less than or equals to 300. So I'm going to set up that here and type 300. Then each time there is up to 300 or is even less, I want to get an update. So this other place too will be populated with a graph of what is going on. So this graph now is also showing us that at this particular time 52 times this condition was met, that it was less than or equals to 300, and then at this time also for about 84 times it was less than or equals to 300. That's what this chart is telling us. And then we can see the timing, you can see the timing for this stock, and then you can see the number of times that our condition was met with this chart. So that's what this chart is telling us. Now we now have to set up our action. So I can select an action right from here. There are a number of actions that you can take. Either I want to get a notification that okay, my stock is already doing less than 300, or I want to get a Teams message. So either way you can set up any of them. If I want to set up a Teams message, I can click on this, and then I will set up a Teams message, and then you can see the recipients. You can add other recipients to if you want. But where this gets interesting is that you can actually make custom action. So I'm not going to do any Teams message. So let me just ignore that. So what I want to do now is a custom action. I will click on custom action, and I'll click on create. Once I click on create, I can name my action. I can name my action NSFT stock, NFST stock bid price position. This is that I can give this feed a name. I can just call it NFST again, NSFT. Then I'll click on add. So once that is done, I have a connection string here. Then I can copy this connection string. Then I go to my Power Automate flow, or I can open my Power Automate directly from here. So by the time I get into my Power Automate interface, then there is an endless possibility that I can do. You know that our Power Automate is to automate things. I can create a different condition within my Power Automate that okay, if it's this stock, notify this person and all those beautiful stuff that you can do within your Power Automate. So I had already copied this connection string, but where it becomes useful, I'm going to show us by the time I create a Power Automate flow. So I will create a flow now within Power Automate. So let me just click this so that it automatically opens a new tab for me to create a flow. So a new tab has been opened for me where I can now design my Power Automate flow. You can see that I have an invalid parameter here. So let me just click on this and then see what the invalid parameter is. So which is our connection string. So like I said, let me just copy it again to be sure, and I can go back to my Power Automate. So I come here, then I provide that connection string. So once I have that provided, so that should take out this error. So you see that the error is now out. So let me close this interface now. So within our Power Automate flow now, for those that are familiar with the Power Automate, we know that you can always start your flow with a trigger. So a data activator connector is now available in Power Automate that you can use. So use that as a trigger, and then you can set up actions based on the trigger that is being fired from whatever environment. In this case now, it's coming from data activator. So I can click on this, then I can add an action. So I can add any of these action. Maybe I can do it with Power Automate desktop or any other thing. Maybe I want to use mail or anything. So all the beautiful stuff that you can create with Power Automate can be done here. Now that we are in Power Automate environment, what is important is that there is now a data activator connector available within Power Automate. So these are all the various actions that you can take within Power Automate. So depending on what you want to do, you can automate things from here, and it becomes endless and limitless. So you can even say, let's say I want to add an email. Okay, so this is email here, so I can just pick email or any other thing, but this will not be applicable in a real life scenario because you can actually configure it into an email or into Teams environment without necessarily having to come into Power Automate. But whatever kind of automation that you want to do, you can do it within Power Automate because you now have a data activator connector in your Power Automate. So I'll close this. So as me you want to design that from scratch, you can actually delete this trigger here and set that up by yourself. So you can add a trigger. So you can search, you can also always search data activator, and once you search for data activator, then that will come up and you can then configure it accordingly. So this is an activator, so which is still in an early access now, so the actions are not predictable. So I can select it, and then you can see that it has been added into my Canva. Then I have to provide that connection string that I copied earlier, so I can do Control V, and then that will set it up for me. And of course, you can continue in creating your flow. You can continue creating your flow. So let me move this here, and so you can continue creating your flow. So you can continue creating your flow, then you can click on add and insert step and add whatever action that you want to do and all the things that you can do within Power Automate. So that is that about data activator. But you can always come back to your Fabric environment, and then once that is done, you can close this. So this is still rolling, so you can close it. So you can always also send a test alert into your environment. Either you set up for an email, for example, or you set up an Outlook, so you can send test alert. So you should get a email notification or an Outlook notification on your Office 365. Thank you.